Hello, hello, hello. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today I am going to do a sidetrack from the gateway process, and I'm going to talk about something that I know everyone is super excited about, which is logic. Okay. And essentially, I want to get into logic and show how the structure of reasoning, knowledge, and show how the relationship with science essentially leads to a conclusion that was given to us by the Greek philosopher Socrates over 2,000 years ago, which is I know that I know nothing. Okay. So deductive logic works like this. Say we have two beliefs in our world. I believe that Greg is a fish, and I believe that all fish like bananas. So, in a deductive fashion, we would be able to extract from these premises this conclusion that Greg likes bananas. Okay, so you can see how if we were to accept these two premises, this naturally follows. We're not adding any new information that isn't already contained in these two premises. All right. Now you might be thinking, well, that's kind of crazy stuff. What is he what is he talking about fish and bananas for? And that's to illustrate the point that you can have good reasoning without things applying to the actual world. Okay. So deduction, this works well deductively. However, the premises don't apply to the world at large. Okay. Greg is a fish. Well, I'm not a fish, so that's false. And all fish like bananas, that's pretty safe to say that's false also. So as long as one or more of the premises can be shown to be false, then we can disregard the argument because you can't base a conclusion based on premises that are false. It does no good to us, right? Intuitively, think about that. You're not going to want to base any kind of reasoning that or any kind of conclusion that you're going to use based on something that's not true. Okay. So because the reasoning still flows good, it's deductively valid. However, because the one or more of the premises are not true, we would say it's not sound. All right. So soundness essentially means the argument is valid and the premises are true. Validity simply means that the conclusion can be extracted from the premises in a deductive fashion. And basically, you're not adding any new information to the conclusion. All right. Now, this would be a better argument that we would want to apply because this is a sound argument, meaning, going back to the definition I just gave, the premises are true and the reasoning is valid, right? So Greg is a human. Yes, that is true. I am a human. All humans have a heart. That is true. Therefore, we can conclude that Greg has a heart. Yay, I have a heart. All right, I can conclude that. And I know that these premises are true, so I can conclude this and safely apply it to the real world, right? At least I think that I can do that, all right? So this is the way that deduction works. This is the structure of reasoning that all mathematical proofs use, all right? They use deduction. They start with premises, and then they keep extrapolating, extrapolating, extrapolating until they finally produce the conclusion. You know, something like E equals mc squared. He started with premises that looked much different than that, and through different translations of his premises, he showed that they eventually led to the conclusion. Okay. And that's exactly what we do pretty much every day, or we try to do, is use this kind of good reasoning, right? We want good, trustworthy conclusions. And the way to do that is through deductively sound arguments. Okay. The reasoning flows and the premises are true. Now, deduction goes in opposition to induction, right? And it's really, the difference is really easy to differentiate. So induction basically you are adding new information to the conclusion that is not already found in the premises. Okay, so let's say I only know these two things to be true, and then I say Greg has blonde hair, right? So given those two premises, can we conclude that Greg has blonde hair? No. In fact, the premises don't even mention blonde hair. So I'm adding new information to this conclusion that is not already found in the premises, okay? And that's an example of inductive logic. And you could already see intuitively how that's no good. It doesn't make any sense. We can't just make things up as we go along. It just doesn't work like that. And it's not the way that any kind of sound conclusion or explanation is going to come about, okay? So we're always striving to use deductive logic, right? We want to reason things out correctly. However, in our day-to-day lives, we tend to use inductive logic more so than deductive logic, right? So let's say an example, like you're walking down the street. There's nothing that says that, the next step you take is gonna allow your foot to stand on the sidewalk or whatever you're walking on, and you're going to be able to keep walking. For all you know, the next step is going to cause you to shoot up 50 feet in the air. The only thing that allows you to not think that is past experience. But past experience deductively does not lead to a conclusion that you're going to be able to expect in the future, okay? So let's go down to this kind of the meat of what I want to get to. All right. So one should never feel superior to another. And there's no such thing as a lesser being, as we are all truly equal. There are simply those lacking the necessary experiences to gain understanding. Lacking in experience does not equate to lacking in value, as one has no control over the experiences they encounter. This would only make them ignorant or unaware of their lack of knowledge, and innocence is inherent in ignorance. How can one construct a proper argument without having the requisite knowledge to do so? It is truth and the connecting of premises that allow for sound deduction, as we just went over, and this is the nature of logic. Furthermore, assessing the truth or falsity of a premise can only be done to the best of our methodologies, and that is currently through keen and repeated observation, and science as we call it. Therefore, anything we observe and build evidence for can still only amount to our best approximation, which is what we would call a scientific theory or scientific law. In the end, however, we are continuously building arguments based on premises that are merely our best approximations. Even axiomatic systems must assume a part of themselves in order to prove themselves, as Gödel's incompleteness theorem showed us. This is because all systems we create are fundamentally arbitrary and merely represent our best attempt to model the universe around us. In our arrogance, we think our models are satisfactory, and we, not all of us, then impose these newfound beliefs on each other. We must deeply accept that at the very best, we still only have a model, and it may, in time, through development of new technologies, be shown to be false as new observations come to light. And this is where science has gone astray, sadly, but the error is not with the methodology itself, the scientific methodology. It is with the men and women who wield their observations as if they are universal truths. It's men and women who usually attempt to gain and retain wealth, reputation, social status, power, resources, small and large, as incentivized by the capitalistic structure the world has adopted. So they too, as evil as some of them may seem, are ignorant and therefore innocent. And even this argument is simply my best approximation on how to approach knowledge, and that would be always humbly. I know that I know nothing. And that was said by Socrates, okay? So the point is that if we're going to use deduction as our as our kind of guiding light to our conclusions in the world, then we got to think about how are we getting our premises, right? How are we claiming something to be true? And it is always through observation that we do this, right? We observe things in the real world as we go through experiences, and then we use those experiences or the things that we gained from those experiences as premises to make conclusions at a later date. And the thing is we never know for certain if those premises are actually true. Every time we build an argument, we're simply using what we think to be something that is true. But we've only built evidence for something. And given the limitations of our ability to observe things, which are the five senses plus whatever technology allows us to observe, those things are extremely limited. And we have no way of knowing if there's more beyond those things, beyond those observations. Okay. So let's get back into this. So how can one construct a proper argument without having the requisite knowledge to do so? Okay. So if someone hasn't gone through the required experiences, right? Let's say you want to make claims about mathematics, but you've never studied mathematics, or someone else has never studied mathematics. It doesn't make any sense to assume that, oh, even though they've never studied mathematics, they're going to be able to know mathematics, right? I know that sounds kind of obvious, but the point is that we have to go through experiences in order to gain what we would call knowledge, in order to gain the premises from which to draw the conclusions. Okay. Let's see. And this is kind of what I'm hinting at right here earlier. So assessing the truth or falsity of a premise can only be done to the best of our methodologies, and that is through keen and repeated observation. And even though we might observe something, a million times, like gravity, right? We observe the effects of gravity every day while we're walking. We can still only say that that is our best approximation of what we're observing, right? We don't know for 100% certainty that the conclusions that we draw from any kind of explanation from gravity are going to hold true later, at a future date, whether it's tomorrow or it's 10,000 years from now. All right. So every time that we're building an argument, we're doing it based on our best approximations. We're simply modeling the universe around us. We don't know if our models actually work or if they're actually objectively true. We don't know that, and no one knows that. I don't really care who you are. You don't know that the models apply universally in an objective sense. The only thing we can say is that we're simply using our very best model, our very best explanation to move forward from. But we have to be very, very careful. And this is truly where I think a lot of scientists have gone astray. And I don't think it's their fault, but we tend to hold on to our theories and our life's work because it is our life's work and because our jobs depend on it if you are a scientist. And without the flexibility to switch theories or to switch models or switch explanations, without that flexibility, it's going to be very difficult for anyone, let alone a scientist, to be able to draw the right conclusions, to be able to work through all the different failures in order to reach the right conclusion, or at least what we would call the best model of explanation for what we're dealing with. And given that we only have five senses and that we also are limited by our technology in terms of our powers to observe, it is very presumptuous to think that those things apply universally or in an objective sense. It just does not make sense if you are truly being scientific minded about it or truly humble about it, right? The best scientists cannot have attachment to the conclusion. They are simply an instrument observing and then drawing whatever conclusion their observations tell them to draw. If they are, linked to the conclusion, like let's say they're getting funded and they need to make a new type of plastic, and they have a theory that doing a certain combination of molecules will yield this new type of plastic, and the funding from the company that is providing that money, they really want that. Well, the scientist, he is then biased. He's going to do everything he can, not necessarily every scientist would do this, but this is what the capitalist structure promotes, is that the scientist is then attached to the outcome instead of being detached from it, which would allow them to be completely impartial and unbiased. Instead, we see the opposite. We see that scientists have to fight for their conclusions to be true, even if the information doesn't necessarily lead them down that path. And that's because so many other things are at stake. It makes no sense to force scientists to operate in this fashion. It just is absolutely destructive to scientific methodology itself. And unfortunately, right now, science is the best methodology for determining truths in this world, or what we would think to be truths. Okay. So even still, at the end of the day, we're only modeling the universe with constructs that come from our head, from our minds. And even if we can repeat the results a million times over, there is still a probability, a chance that at different places in the universe or different dimensions of the universe, whatever, we don't know what's out there, that these things may not hold true anymore. So to say that these things hold objectively true and then, try to impose these other beliefs on people, it just doesn't make any sense. But given the nature of capitalism, you can see it's fairly obvious why those things happen, right? But essentially, this is what I believe Socrates meant when he said, "I know that I know nothing." Is what he means is he knows that he knows nothing with absolute certainty. Of course, Socrates would probably say he knows how to eat a fig, or he probably knows how to lay down in bed or walk and go to the bathroom or whatever, right? I'm sure Socrates would not sit there in constant doubt about those basic things. But Socrates would most likely say that I don't know anything with absolute certainty. And that's because there is reasonable doubt to doubt anything. And we don't know the true nature of this universe yet. And we don't know if our models are going to stand up in the long run. Okay? So I think it's really critical that we internalize these things. And if you are trying to get into a spiritual path, or even if you're not, understanding that you know nothing with absolute certainty and internalizing that, having that belief then imposed on your nervous system so that you feel it. You are basically, you feel the humility. You understand that you know nothing with absolute certainty, and so you don't try to fight anything. You don't try to argue with anything or anyone. You also don't judge anything or anyone, because you don't know if you're right. You don't know if they're right. You don't know if anyone's right. All any of us are doing are trying to create models of the universe. We're trying to explain it the best we can through concepts that we create, okay? And that is something that has helped me along my way, and I really, really hope it helps you. I know that I know nothing. And I would put an asterisk and say with absolute certainty. So I hope this helps. Until next time, have a great day. I love you all. Take care.